Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Hey guys, Sarah Larbi here. Welcome back to another episode of Where Should I Invest? Super excited to have you guys back for another week. This is probably going to release at some point in April. I don't know what the future holds, but I will say this is not a time to panic. And at the end of the day, things will go down, things will come up. And in the long run, we'll forget about this. Just like when SARS came, it was not as bad, granted, but I mean, we haven't talked about it for years. And it was scary at that point in time, just like this is scary now. But in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's not going to be something that we are going to be as fearful of as of today. So this could be a great opportunity to get out there and get some good off-market opportunities, or also some opportunities on MLS that you're not competing with tons of offers. So I would say hang in there. This is a good opportunity, even just to say, I need to build a buffer should this happen again, a better buffer, 3 months, 6 months. How long can you go if your tenants stop paying rent, if the mortgages were still due, if you still had bills to pay? Get a good buffer going. So real estate, I think ultimately is still the way to go. You still have your mortgage pay down. If appreciation does go down, it'll come back up over the years. We never bank on appreciation, and you'll still get some cash flow. So hang in there, guys. Don't panic. Things will get better, and we'll return to normal at some point in the future. So on that note, guys, hope you enjoy this interview. I had Monica. If you have followed me on Instagram or have Instagram, you might have seen her. She does a lot of her own renos. Momo's Home is her Instagram handle, and we talk about it as well. Very, very talented. She really started with just nothing in terms of money, but really, did what she needed to do, figured out how to do her own renos, and built equity in the properties. So she has a really great story. Millennial, just making things happen with the right mindset. So I'm super excited to have her on the show for today. And, despite what happens out there, guys, it's just about mindset, right? 95% is mindset. So if the economy goes to shit, hey, it is what it is. We're all in the same boat, but let's just not freak out, and let's look at the end of the tunnel, which is going to be upward momentum. So let's take advantage of not every single person being in the market at this point in time, like it was in January, February, and part of March. So on that note, guys, enjoy the podcast. Hey, Monica, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. I'm super excited. So I originally noticed what you were doing and all the work that you were doing hands-on on Instagram, and I started following you and just really loved, your ability to showcase and also do, because I'm big at delegating and I'm not like very good with my hands. And I thought it was just so awesome to see, and I'm like, you have to be on my podcast. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. So for those of you listening at home and you want to check out her Instagram, it's at momos_home_, so MOMOS_HOME_. So tell us a little bit about you and what you do when it comes to real estate.
So I'm from Ottawa, and I got started about 5 years ago when I purchased my first home. I was living in the home and I had rented out the other rooms. I really liked working hands-on and being creative, and so that's how I got started. And I didn't have a lot of pre-experience when I got into it, so I was watching YouTube videos and reading forums, and that's how I learned, and I just took it one project at a time. Yeah.
Very cool. So you learned how to do everything from YouTube videos?
Yeah, everything from YouTube videos. And it started out with very simple projects, and then as I kept going, it got more complicated. So for the first house, it was a lot of cosmetic stuff. And then when I was done with that house, I sold it and I purchased the house that I'm living in right now. And it was a complete gut. Like I walked in and took everything out, kitchen, bathroom, all of that. So that was a lot more complicated than the first part, which was just kind of like painting and replacing some floorings. I actually took out some load-bearing walls here, and I had to take out permits. And then once the upstairs was done, I put a legal unit into the basement. And again, that was more complicated because I had to start doing like fire ratings and learning different like construction processes and like really starting from scratch. And yeah, so it just kept going from there. Started easy and then kept working into more and more complicated stuff.
Very cool. So are you working on these projects by yourself, or do you have people that you also have, you know, handyman, plumbers, electricians, or is this really hands-on you doing it from start to finish?
I do like 95% of the work myself, and I've hired out. So the load bearing walls, I hired that work out because it's very hard. And I hired out like plumbing rough-ins and major electrical work. Some of the electrical and like small plumbing jobs I can do myself, but like the bigger ones that need like a full rough-in, I hired that work out. And my boyfriend's actually a plumber, so that's pretty convenient. We met just before the basement renovation, so he did the rough-in there. And my like friend from high school that was renting at the last house and rented a room here, he's an electrician, so it was good to have him around when I needed help with that stuff.
So you're well connected. So I'm interested in the financials. Can we walk through, you know, how much for example, your first property, how much money it cost initially, and then how much your rentals cost and timelines, and then what you do after if you refi them. So let's walk through like from start to finish your first property.
Sure. Yeah. So my first property, I was just getting started, very poor. So I bought a house. It was about 300,000, and I put 5% down. So it's about $15,000. And when I was done with everything, I only had about $3,000 in my bank account. So very little money to start out with the renovations. So I did everything budget and was using Kijiji and borrowing tools and like anything I could to save money. So I don't think at that time I was really like tracking my costs because I wasn't thinking about it as an investor. I was just like, oh, this is cheap, then I need to do it. And so I would guess that I put about maybe 15,000 in material in. Even doing the work yourself, material for construction is very expensive, and getting the tools is very expensive. You really save in the labor. So it took me about 2.5 years to fix that house up. I was just going slowly, like evenings and weekends, and living there. And so after the 2.5 years, I sold it for $350,000. And I also I had paid down some of my mortgage. So that gave me enough money to put $70,000 as a down payment for this house. I bought it for $350,000, and it's a small bungalow, 1,000 square feet. And it has the entrance to the side to do the second unit. So that's why I liked this house. But again, after I put the 20% down, which was required by the bank, I only had about $700 in my account getting started. So I had to pull out a line of credit. And I would say, like for the basement unit, as an example, I spent $40,000 on that to put it in, where if I had hired the workout, it would probably be closer to $100,000. So you really do save, but it took me 8 months to complete the project, and I was working in Halifax at the time. So it was like hard.
So there's back and forth. So was this property in Ottawa as well?
Yeah, this property is in Ottawa as well. And after all the renovations were done, so it was about 30,000 upstairs and 40,000 downstairs, so 70,000 in total. The house was reevaluated at 515, and I refinanced it and got about 130,000 back, and that one went as a down payment for the next house.
Do you have that next house yet or not?
Yeah, I just purchased it in December, and it was 387,000, which is a lot higher than the first two, but the prices in Ottawa have been skyrocketing. So it was still a steal in the market right now, whereas like it was only in the last like 2-3 years that the prices have seen like double-digit increases. We've always been like really stable. So there was not a lot of change between like the first house, the second house, and then the third house. I was like, oh, I got to start moving.
Absolutely. So now, okay, so the first house you sold, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then the second house you still have?
Yeah, I live upstairs and I rent the basement on Airbnb.
Awesome. And then the third house, what's your plan with the third one?
I did a quick renovation there in just 2 months, and it's rented right now.
Okay, so you're burring them.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So I want to talk about Airbnb as well for Ottawa. So I bought this property in Burlington, and it was, very old house, but it had good bones, and was very dated. So we put in a lot of money. So unlike you, I'm not very handy. And so I hired a contractor who does a good job, but it costs a lot more money, obviously, like than what you're spending. But I think what we're going to do is originally we were going to move into it and then Airbnb our Oakville house. But I think we're going to stay in Oakville now. And we just decided this yesterday. And Airbnb the Burlington house. And I actually really enjoy Airbnb. But how does Airbnb how is that in Ottawa, in the Ottawa market? And what are you getting a night? And, walk us through that piece and how you're managing it.
Well, it's a bit different here now. They just put in restrictions where you can only rent out rooms in your house and you can't rent out second dwelling units. And I didn't like it at first because, of course, we're doing all the work ourselves. So it's like cleaning it every time somebody left. We were getting about $1,500 a month, like with renting it like 1 or 2 nights at a time, but it was so time consuming to always be cleaning it. So we only did that for the first 2 months. And then I changed it so they have to have 1 month stay minimum. We're really close to a hospital here. So I was thinking we'd get residents in. And after that, we've been renting it like month by month. So we only have to clean it once a month. And that's been really good. But it's changed recently with the new regulations. So if people in Ottawa are interested in changing, they can do month-long stays, and it's under the 28 days, so it's not considered a short-term rental, and you can still put it on Airbnb that way.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess you just got to be careful with the whole tax thing and the HST and all of that. But I'm not an accountant, but definitely check with your accountant on how that works. Oakville has, implemented some of those items as well. Like it has to be your primary residence. And then there's like a licensing fee that you've got to pay. So I'm like, I'm just going to live in Oakville and I'll just do it in Burlington. I don't know. I mean, why not? So at the end of the day, what are you getting for your Airbnb if you're renting it by month versus just a long-term tenant?
$1,500 still.
So if you were to rent it long-term, how much would you get there?
I'd say maybe $1,200, $1,300. So you got a little extra by doing the short-term furnished.
Okay, awesome. And how, because you're living in it, how are you managing it? Like are they asking you a lot of questions? I have an Airbnb cottage as well. Like, because there's a lot of people thinking like, this is pretty cool, but it probably is going to be a lot more work. What are your thoughts on that?
It's been really hands-off with the long-term tenants, because what we're getting is people that are coming here to work during the week and then they go home on weekends. So it's like always quiet on the weekends. We hardly hear from them. Usually they're working a lot and, they haven't been asking too many questions or too demanding. So it's been really nice.
Awesome. There's also a need for, and I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, that will have like floods or fires and then they have to move somewhere and the insurance pays it out. So like in Burlington, Oakville as an example, like if you rent out something short term, you're looking at anywhere between 150 to 250 a night, depending on what it is, of course, but that could be 6,000-7,000 a month.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. And so that actually, the way that we're going to set it up is if that's the case, even on, a 15-day or half vacancy, I would still be better off to do it with Airbnb than to do it long-term.
Yeah, that's true. And it's nice, even if you're renting it month by month, that after they leave, you have the option to increase your prices. You're not stuck. Prices going up here and you don't want to miss out on that or have someone locked in for years at something below market rate.
I think you said it too. Like I think that's the problem with Ontario is we have so many rules and regulations that are pro-tenant and against landlords in a sense, right? If they don't pay, it takes you a long time. Obviously do the paperwork correctly, but the courts are so backed up. And actually, speaking of this backing up, like depending on when this airs, the coronavirus, I just read yesterday that the landlord tenant board was shut down until further notice. I'm like, oh my God, like, I get it, but could they not do something like virtually? I don't know. Tenant doesn't pay. How much longer can they get away with this stuff? So
exactly. And if they're not working because of COVID and then they're not paying rent and you can't evict them because the board's closed, kind of screwed.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This, by the time that we're recording this, we are mid-March and, it could get worse before it gets better, but let's, I would just say, regardless of what happens, this is actually a really good time. if you have the cash to be able to negotiate a little bit more on the purchases of the houses. What are your thoughts on, the housing market in this type of time right now that we're living in?
Yeah, I'd really like to get out and buy right now because it seems like everybody's staying home and they're preoccupied and they're in like, safety mode, hoarding stuff, going home. So I think it'd be a good time to buy, probably be less competitive. But then at the same time, with interest rates going down, you probably have a lot of people trying to, refinance, get the money by now because it's so cheap. So
Yeah.
it could go either way. It could like put prices higher, or it could put less buyers out there. I'll be interested to see how it plays out.
Time will tell, but at the end of the day, fast forward 2 years and this will be like SARS. Like, we don't really ever think of SARS, and next year it'll be something else, and the next year it'll be something else again. So this could be a good window though, not to have 3 to 20 offers on every single property. So good time to buy. Don't panic. Stay out of the fray, as Don Campbell says. Awesome. So I want to go back a little bit to your do-it-yourself projects. Walk us through like maybe one of the tougher projects that you did from start to finish, and how that all went out.
Say the basement was probably the most complicated because it involved having, I had to hire someone to do drawings that were code compliant, submit them to the city, get a permit, and then have a lot of inspections and do fire rating behind all the pot lights and make sure everything was, and then resilient channels, insulation, so you meet your sound rating. And we had to cut in a window into the foundation because we didn't meet the lighting requirements. So that's part of the OBC, is that you have to have a certain percentage of the floor space has natural lighting coming in. So we didn't have enough window space, and that gets complicated.
It does. Every city will have different requirements, and lighting in certain rooms of the place is very important. And it's like a percentage of natural light that you want.
It's Ontario Building Code. Because I work in construction, I actually have it printed. It's in the house. It's this huge binder, and in there it gives you the requirements. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it's about 5 or 10% of the floor area, depending on if you're in a kitchen or a living room. And then the bedroom, you have to have an egress window. Actually, an egress window doesn't have to be in your bedroom, but you have to have like an egress window somewhere, so you have 2 exits.
Very cool. Awesome. Good to know. So if somebody wants to get started and do their own renovations, how would you suggest that they go about that?
I'd say start with small stuff and work your way up. And when you're doing the renovations, if you're planning to rent it or sell it later, try not to put too much of your personal style into it, and do things that are more like universally accepted. So like cleaning, brighten the space up. So get started on small stuff like painting and replacing maybe flooring in one room. One thing I love to do in the house is replace all the baseboards. It's, you can do a little bit of carpentry. It's fun, but it also makes the place look so much better and more modern because they're often neglected. You can change out light switches too into the Decora ones, which is like a little easy electrical project. Changing out light fixtures from the old ones into like LED lighting is a good one. So go from there. And then if you want to get more complicated, you could start doing tiling and start with a backsplash and then maybe do your bathroom.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Is there anything that you will not touch?
Nope. No. I really love learning, and I really love working with my hands. So there's times where I'm like, oh, I probably should hire this out. Like the roof and windows are coming up, and I know it's something that it would be easier to hire it out, but I really want to do it myself. So I'm really, really excited for that. But electrical is something in the basement. We hired our friend to do the electrical for us because it's electrical things, but I want to make sure that it's code compliant, and it's expensive to go back and fix it, and it can be dangerous if it's not done properly. And I didn't want to like plug into the panel. So that stuff I'll stay away from.
Awesome. That's great. I'm very big on delegating because I feel like if I touched this stuff, I would probably mess it up. But kudos to you. I mean, that's just so admirable that, you don't need a whole lot of money to get started, and you are proof, right? You just have to have the determination and the will to do it. How did you even come across wanting to do this in the first place?
Well, I think it probably started when I was young. Like my parents did a lot of work at home, never major renovations, but I was always helping out with that. I remember when I was about like 13 years old, my dad had my sister and I shingling the roof on the shed because he had to go out and do errands or something. So I was always out there working, and I really enjoyed it. And so when I started in an office, I didn't like that at all. And I was also really drawn to getting into construction. So I ended up, leaving my first job and then moving into a construction related field. And I just absolutely loved it. And it just like fit. And it was, you know, I was happy to get up every day and go to work. And the same thing at the end of the day, going home, like I just like am so excited to go home and like keep working and see the progress. And it's nice when it's all done and you can be proud of what you've accomplished and look around and be like, I built that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it must be tough too, because this is not your full-time job. Like you still work full-time. And even when you were doing the second reno, you were in Halifax. Like, how did you even manage to do all of that?
Yeah, that was really tough. There's a lot of times where it wasn't fun at all and I didn't want to keep going, but I had to, because you're like halfway through a renovation and you have to finish it and you need to get the rental income. That's like the end goal. But it was tough to push through that. And so it was just like a matter of like trying to stay positive and like keep in mind what the end goal is and what you're working so hard for. I am getting to a point now where I kind of want to start hiring out renovations, because it's very physically demanding and it's exhausting, especially if you're working full time. And I just want to have more free time to do different things. So I think you do reach a point where if you want to scale up, you do have to start hiring it out, because it's very time consuming. And so you can't grow as fast as you want to. It's good at the start when you don't have a lot of money and you have some free time on the evenings and weekends and you want to get started that way, and it's good to learn. But if you want to scale and move a little faster, you do have to start hiring the workout.
Yeah, but it is cool. There's lots of ways to get started. I mean, we first started with a $129,000 house from the 1850s that was the cheapest thing we could find at that point in time. And then we moved from there. So, and we hired my father-in-law to, I think he was like, I don't know, 20, 25 bucks an hour that we negotiated with him to help us at the beginning. But, it is cool to see, there's no lack of resources if you're resourceful.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different ways to get into real estate, and if you want to DIY it, then that is an option. If you like working with your hands and being creative, you can do it that way.
Absolutely. Awesome. On that note, I wanted to take a moment and thank you. But before we go, there is our lightning round questions.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions, and you are going to give us the first answer that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite real estate investing book ever?
Well, when I first started, I actually read Real Estate for Dummies in Canada, which is like the very basic book of, because I was like so overwhelmed with all the information out there, and it just like brings it down to the basics of like what are you able to buy, how do you purchase it, what are the costs going to look like. So that was a good starting book for the first house. And right now I'm reading the Acre System by Don Campbell, and that one's very good. I think I heard about it on your podcast, so I went to go pick up a copy, and I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. Yes, both of those are great books. And I actually long ago too read the For Dummies book on real estate.
Yeah,
they're actually good books.
One. Yeah, very easy, well laid out.
Absolutely. Awesome. Question number 2, what is your favorite podcast?
Your podcast. It's actually the only one I listen to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when we connected on social media, it's like I had heard about your podcast. I started listening to it, and right now it's the only one I listen to. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Well, it's guests like you that come in and share with the listeners that make it awesome. So thank you. Number 3, what's your favorite pastime? So what do you do for fun when it's not real estate or work?
Yeah, I'm so lame. I love renovations. Like before, when people would ask me, what's your favorite thing to do? It's like, oh, I love renovating and going home and doing projects. So that's definitely one of them. I also like doing yoga, reading books, hanging out with friends and family, the basics. When I'm tired of renovations, I like to go relax and read a book.
Awesome. Well, you'll have more time once you start delegating, as you mentioned, right?
Exactly. I can't wait. I'm going to sit by the dock and just chill out.
Awesome. Number 4, if you lost all of your money and your assets tomorrow, how would you start again?
I take a very similar approach. I'd probably start with my primary residence, 5% down, and pick a house that I can convert to a duplex. So I'd live there and I'd turn it into a duplex and start from there, then refinance and keep going.
Very cool. Now, and last question, if somebody has $50,000 and they want to get started, how would you recommend they spend it?
The same answer as the last question. I think I would start, if they don't have a house, use that ability to put less than 20% down and find a home where you can live there, and then rent out the spaces that you're not using. Even if it has a garage, rent out the garage, like find any way to make money off that property.
Amazing. On that note, thank you so much. How can listeners find out more about you if they did want to reach out?
Well, they can reach out through Instagram. That's where I show most of the work and what I'm doing. I don't have any websites or anything. I'm on LinkedIn.
What's your LinkedIn name?
Monica Liscano.
All right. And your Instagram name we talked about in the beginning as well, but do you want to just refresh our memories on your Instagram handle?
It's Momos, MOMOS _home _.
Awesome. Any final last words of advice, Monica, before we let you go?
Yeah, I'd say for people that are getting started, just to enjoy the process, roll with the punches and have fun while you're doing it, because it's a long game and it can be really difficult. So keep positive and stick with it, and you will see the results. It'll be worth it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a great guest on the show, and all of your insights and information is absolutely, 100% valuable and insightful. So thank you, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?